Hello, my name is Friendo, and welcome to Friendo Today. And today we are asking the question, are millennials and Zoomers doomed? Or a brief analysis of intergenerational economic well-being trends in the United States. In plain English, is it harder out there economically for Zoomers and millennials than it was for the generations that came before us? Well, let's go find out. On this journey, we'll be following our good friend Joe Zoomer. He's 18 years old. He's right on the cusp of adulthood. He is ready to start his life. So, where to first for Joe? Well, maybe he wants to get a bit of higher education. What's that going to cost him? Well, it's going to cost him a whole lot more than it used to cost. Here we can see the average cost of tuition, fees, room, and board in the United States. All of this is adjusted for inflation. This top line is for private universities, and this bottom line is for public universities. We can see that private universities have become 170% more expensive since 1971. And public universities aren't that much better, also becoming 147% more expensive, though still significantly cheaper in overall nominal terms. So maybe Joe looks at that and he's like, what about community college? Well, the numbers there are significantly lower, at least in a nominal term. And this is just tuition, not factoring in room, board, commuting, any of that stuff. I'm assuming that, maybe he gets to live at home while he's going to community college or something. But we can see in the year 2020 that the average one-year tuition for community college was $3,730 per year. That is still a 116% increase from 1989. So the numbers may be low here, but things are still getting expensive quite quickly. This expense means more than just college debt, though Lord knows what means college debt. We will get to that in a second. But it means things like food insecurity for college students. I mean, we have 1 in 20 college students having to skip 3 days or more of eating because they can't afford food. And it's even worse for community college students at 7% of them. So in some ways, so much for community college actually being more affordable. We always think in terms of debt, but it's more than that. But it is also debt. I mean, look, everyone and their mother knows that college debt is a problem. Here are some graphs of student loan debt in the United States. It's bad. I'm not going to beat a dead horse on this one. So, let's say Joe Zoomer goes to college, graduates, he's looking for a job, or maybe he looks at all of that cost and he's like, I'll just go looking for a job right away. Well, maybe he really does have to consider strongly taking on that debt because we can see that employment trends are strongly favoring college grads in the US. So let's walk through this. So first, here on the left, we can see that employment is rising faster in occupations requiring higher levels of preparation. The top line are high prep job numbers in the millions, and the bottom line is low prep job numbers. In 1980, they were just about the same, but since then, high prep jobs have grown at faster rates. We can see that once again here when we're talking about preparation, like what sort of skills does that mean? We can see that overall there's been a 50% growth in jobs available between 1980 and 2015, but jobs that require high levels of social skills and analytical skills have grown at a significantly faster rate than jobs that just require good physical skills. Additionally, when we look at the makeup of these jobs that require high social skills or high analytical skills, we can see here, first of all, in the gold, the majority of folks in those roles have a bachelor's degree or more, and then even 28% on top of that have at least some college education, with high school grads making up the small minority of the folks in those roles. Now, obviously, it's more evenly divided for physical roles, but those are the ones that are growing the slowest. But maybe he goes to college to get some of those higher prep jobs. Maybe he doesn't go to college. What can he expect when he actually gets into the workforce? Well, first of all, he can expect to work harder than people did in the past. Here we can see the average number of weeks worked per year in 1980 and 2015. In 1980, the average number of weeks worked was 43 weeks per year. By 2015, that had gone up to 46.8 weeks per year. That is an increase of 3.8 weeks. That's almost a month. 4 weeks, that's almost a month of additional work per year. And he'll also probably be working more hours during the week, but only a few more. So he'll probably be working more than folks did in the past. What's he going to get for all of that extra work? And by the way, it's work that requires higher skill too on average. Well, unfortunately, in terms of pay, things don't look that great. Now, there are some silver linings in here. So first of all, women are slowly but surely making up the wage gap, which is good. But if you look at men, if you look at their average wage in 1980 of $51,000 and then 2015 of $50,000, they've actually earned less money on average than they used to. And this kind of blew my mind a little bit because when you look at wage growth statistics in your head, or at least in my head, I was like, okay, well, it's sort of this like rising tide that's lifting all these different boats. But this suggests that's not quite what might be going on, and that wage growth may simply be driven by a reduction in discrimination in the workforce. Now, that's excellent, but I don't think that's what most people think is going on when they hear wages are going up. On top of that, we can see that participation in employer-sponsored health insurance plans has fallen. The light green lines are 1980, and the dark green lines are 2013. We can see here for 25 to 54-year-olds, it's fallen from 82% participation to 71% participation. For 16 to 24-year-olds, it's fallen from 70% participation to 50% participation. Now, for this age cohort, I could see Obamacare's 26-year-old mandate potentially being part of what's driving this, where they can kind of stay on their parents' insurance and they may not need to take insurance from their employer. So a small caveat on that piece of data right there, in my opinion. Additionally, the share of workers that have access to, not just participate in, but have access to a retirement plan has fallen since the peak in the year 2000, when about 57% of workers had access to a retirement plan. That has since fallen down to about 45% of workers. So stagnant wages, probably less likely to be participating in health insurance, and less access to retirement plans. On top of that, those wages are not as evenly divided as they used to be. So if Joe really wants to make the big bucks, he better be shooting towards the top of the pie. In 1970, 62 cents out of every dollar earned in the United States went to a middle-income household. By 2018, that had fallen down to 43 cents on the dollar. Who made up that percentage? It was upper-income households, which went from 29 cents on the dollar to 48 cents on the dollar. Now, fortunately, if we look at this graph over here, that doesn't mean that middle-income households and lower-income households are making less money than they used to. They are simply, the growth of their wages has simply lagged behind upper-income households. So I guess that's a silver lining there. But income inequality in itself introduces its own issues. So that's the workplace. But that's not all of what goes into life. Where does Joe go after work? Where does he lay his head to rest? Well, if he wants a place to sleep, he'll need to pay for some housing. Let's take a look at those costs. Unfortunately, rents literally only go up. Since 1985, rents have increased every single year on average, even during the housing crisis, which blew my mind. This graph really just reiterates that point. In red, we can see the median cost of rents, and in blue, we can see household income indexed to 100% in 1960. We see that rents have grown consistently at a faster rate than household income. This means that on average, households will need to spend more of their money on rent than they had to in the past. But let's say Joe saves up. He pays that rent out, he saves, boom, he's going for that house. He wants that white picket fence. He wants that American dream. Well, what do housing prices look like? Here we can see the average home price in the United States, nominal and real. Orange is the inflation adjusted, so let's take a look at that one. First, we can see that for quite some time, from about 1953 all the way through to like 1998-ish, Yes, there's some up and down changes in housing prices, but things stay relatively consistent. Then we hit the housing bubble, and it goes up, 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 boom, 2008, right back down. But since then, we are literally right back to housing bubble price levels, which, at least in real terms, which kind of blows my mind, and I'm a little afraid to say that out loud, lest I give 2020 additional ideas for how to mess with us this year. So, he rents for a while, maybe he gets a house. He finds a lovely woman, they want to start a family together, they want to have some babies. How expensive is it to have babies compared to what it used to be? This was actually a bit of a silver lining I found in my research. So this is the average weekly cost of childcare for families with employed mothers. And we can see that it has gone up over time. However, the proportion of monthly family income seems to actually be holding relatively constant. And that was one of the only stats I found where things seem to be staying relatively the same in terms of how expensive they are. Now, obviously, let's ignore the price of college and stuff like that, but at least for early childhood care, it seems like things may not actually be too much worse than they used to be, which was a pleasant discovery for me, at least. So how do all of these things come together to impact wealth? Wealth being money in the bank, the property you own, kind of all those sorts of things. Well, if you're making kind of the same amount of money that you used to make, but everything's way more expensive in real terms, it's going to be hard to accumulate wealth. And let's take a look at that. Unfortunately, in the US, it's a story of the rich getting richer. In 1983, upper income households had 60 cents on the dollar for wealth in the United States. And they've since just only increased that, with middle income and lower income households losing slices of the pie. And unlike income, where this change is just driven by differential growth rates, if we look over here on the left, we can see that middle and lower income households are literally losing wealth. They're not growing at a slower rate, they're losing it. In 2001, the average middle income household had $144,000 in wealth. Now it's $115,000. The drop is even more precipitous for lower income households that had about 20 grand in wealth in 2001, and it's almost been cut in half to about 11 grand in wealth. So this one is particularly rough to look at least for me. On top of that, Joe isn't really just dealing with class differentials in wealth. He is also dealing with some intergenerational differentials in wealth. So this is a graph of the share of national wealth owned by each generation based on their age. So we can see that right here, when the average baby boomer was about 35 years old in the year 1990, their generation had a little over 20% of wealth in the United States. And they've done well for themselves since then. If we look at Generation X, which is a smaller generation, and that certainly accounts for a portion of the decline in share of national wealth here, we can see that for Gen X, despite being in their late 40s, they still have not picked up as much wealth as the baby boomers had when they were 35 years old. And then finally, we come to the Millennials, who are an even bigger generation than the baby boomers, and they are on track to be the least wealthy generation thus far. I didn't find Zoomers in this data, so I don't know what the story is for them, but I would imagine not great based off of these general trends. We'll see, though. So that was a lot of data really fast, and it's kind of distressing data. So back to our initial question. Are millennials and Zoomers doomed? Well, doomed is a strong word. It's a hyperbolic word. It's a click on me YouTube link word. But if you are a Zoomer, if you're a millennial, heck, if you're in Gen X and you feel like your economic situation is challenging and it's getting harder, that's probably not in your head. There are economic headwinds in the United States for the younger generations. And that's just something that, unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with for right now. This research didn't really dig into why this has happened or what to do about it. Those are entirely separate and, I think, more complicated questions. But I could see myself exploring them down the line. In any case, here's where we stand, at least for the time being. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. Please consider liking, subscribing, whatever. You know the whole shield drill. On top of that, I'm actually also a live streamer. I did all of my research for this presentation live on stream. There's tons of data on top of this that we got to look at together, which was really cool. But obviously I can't fit it all into a YouTube video. Anyway, that's the video. Thanks for coming out. It's 2020. It's hard. Good luck out there. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.